I bet that the anti-meat forces out there have to be feeling pretty confident these days because, unfortunately, there are no shortage of stories about them trying to use institutional power to ban or severely restrict access to meat for the regular consumer, for you and me. I've got a story for you on this from Scotland today, and as it turns out, it's not an isolated attempt to ban meat. In that country, there have been numerous attempts to restrict meat either completely or in certain institutional settings that are already highly regulated, making them more prone to this kind of action. The fight for our meat is here already, and we need to be awake to that reality. So, our story comes from the Scottish Daily Express, where we get this headline: Holyrood to consider bonkers plan to ban meat and force us all to turn vegan. The Scottish Parliament will consider a call to introduce a ban on meat production and consumption between 2030 and 2040. Well, it's not like our MSPs, members of Scottish Parliament, have got anything better to be doing. All right, so that proposal ought to go over as well as a lead balloon, at least with the general population. But the leaders of Scotland, the land of haggis and various sheep, lamb, and beef dishes, as well as numerous seafood dishes, want to impose a top down meat ban. Remember that next time anyone tells you that no one is forcing you to abandon eating meat. There are people who are out there right now who have far too much power and not enough awareness of real problems real people are facing and who lack total nutrition understanding, who do in fact want to make that most intimate of decisions for you. Well, let's take a look at the proposal from the article. Quote, MSPs will return to Holyrood next week ready to debate the pressing issues facing ordinary Scots, starting with a call to introduce a nationwide ban on meat. Nice sarcasm there. The Scottish Parliament's Public Petitions Committee has accepted a petition calling for the ban to be quote unquote phased in within the decade. It has been submitted by Roger Green from the Vote with Your Fork campaign, which is working towards a quote meat free quantum future. His petition says, quoting the petition, here in Scotland, myself and many others support a phased in ban of meat from 2030 to 2040, which also reduces the environmental impact of the livestock food system. Scotland should achieve healthy dietary goals by 2030 to 2040, and amongst other dietary priorities, this includes the phasing out of meat consumption. End quote. Let's hope that by, quote, will consider, the author and the parliamentarians involved mean we'll read the proposal on the floor of Parliament, laugh uproariously at its stupidity, and then have the person who proposed it escorted out of the building for being a petty tyrant. But I doubt that's actually how it will play out. There are enough nutty politicians of any political stripe who think the state is God and who believe that they have the moral duty to impose these massive lifestyle changes and choices on you, whether you like it or not. The petitioner's reasoning behind this is rather amazing. The author of this petition is living in a science fiction land where Star Trek replicators are a reality or soon will be, if his terminology about quantum futures wasn't a giveaway about that. Quote, Mr. Green wrote to all MSPs back in April on behalf of the campaign. He told them that, quote, livestock farming has a very negative impact upon the environment and a detrimental effect on human health and no real welfare or compassion for livestock animals. In addition, he said that recent advances in quantum computing made it theoretically possible to produce both water and food molecules, quote, at literally zero cost and perhaps ad infinitum. The campaigners said it was, quote, time for Scotland to start thinking about a change in diet away from meat into plant-based and the transition for the Scottish farming industry away from meat to sustainable plant-based alternatives. End quote. What utter absolute silly nonsense. We are no closer to living in a resource scarcity free world now than we were when the original Star Trek series aired in the 1960s and showed the world what one vision of that world would look like. It's pure fantasy rubbish that only someone who's lacking in vital proteins and nutrients that can only be found in meat could possibly believe. But These folks do believe this stuff. That's the scary thing about it. They're out there. They are true believers. And this isn't the only time it's been proposed. And the proponents use absolutely made up lies to found their reasoning. Final quote from that article so we can move on to a related story. Quote, a ban on meat has been suggested before, including by the English barrister Michael Mansfield, who said in 2019, quote, I think when we look at the damage eating meat is doing to the planet, it is not preposterous to think that one day it will become illegal. They're not hiding it, folks. This is what they want to do. It followed a study by Oxford University researchers which showed meat and dairy produces 60% of agriculture's greenhouse gas emissions and takes up 83% of farmland, but delivers just 18% of calories and 7% of protein, end quote. I like how they lump otherwise useless grazing land in with regular farmland. I mean, this is utter nonsense. Plant agriculture releases enormous amounts of methane into the atmosphere every time the ground is tilled. Longtime carnivores and keto people know this. We have to defend our lifestyle, but these studies are not conducted by anyone remotely qualified to actually study these things. They are, for the most part, conducted by ideologues with a thirst for power. They're the kind of people who were pushed around when they were kids and have been itching for a chance to get back at the people who pushed them around. And look, I've read these studies. Again, as I've said in other videos recently, I have a PhD in public policy, sustainable development bent. And look, these people are everywhere in that field and they have their chance. No rational actor would push something like a meat ban, but we're not dealing with rationality here. We're dealing with pure, unfiltered ideology, masked in some concern about the creation and world and all the rest of it. And this is the first time something absurd was argued in Scotland. It's not the first time. Let's go back in time. Headline to the Times. Doctors call on NHS to ban meat from hospitals. All vegan menu will save money and improve health. The letter is absurd. I'm going to spare you a lengthy quote here and instead just tell you this much. They likened feeding meat to patients in hospitals to handing out controlled substances and urged, given all the carbon issues we hear so much about, they urge based on that an all-vegan diet in hospitals is something that must be imposed by the Scottish state. Thankfully, this proposal got some pushback from professionals who appear to not be quite so dumb when it comes to human nutrition. We need more pushback from people who might be qualified to talk about this. Headline from PrestonJournal.co.uk. Strawn Stevenson, vegan-only hospital food would harm patients and farmers. And I'm glad that the author here thought of including farmers into the question since they're usually completely ignored when talking about human nutrition. Support your local farmer and rancher folks. Get close to your food system, close to the source of the food. The way the economy is heading, it's just a good idea to support them since they're likely to get hammered by the economy more than a lot of other normal people are going to be. This would be a good time to grow your own food, even if you're not, even if you're carnivore. You can trade that to people who are not carnivores for eggs and things. But anyway, from that article, quote, last week, some Scottish GPs sent an open letter to Caroline Lamb, Chief Executive of NHS Scotland, asking for meat to be banned from hospital menus in a bid to improve public health. Hysterical assertions like this are becoming increasingly fashionable as in vogue veganism continues to grow. It is nevertheless astonishing that qualified medical practitioners can add their names to such an absurd petition. The letter called on NHS Scotland to replace meat, eggs, and dairy products in hospitals with quote-unquote vibrant vegan foods to protect the health of Scottish people and the planet. The claims in the letter are inaccurate and misleading on almost every level. Even vegan doctors must know that getting patients to eat at all is often a challenge. This is true, folks. You ever been around someone who was in intense care? Confronting them with only vegan options would make matters worse. A balanced diet which provides a patient with choice must surely be best. Arguing that plant-based food is healthier is disingenuous. For millennia, the natural human diet has always contained both animal and plant foods. For those not aware, millennia is like 1,000 years, 2,000 years, something like that. So technically true. Meat and dairy products contain vitamin B12, an essential nutrient not naturally present in foods of plant origin. Red meat is also an excellent source of iron, zinc, niacin, riboflavin, and thiamine. So eating a little meat or dairy along with your vegetables boosts the number of vitamins in a healthy meal, end quote. I wonder how he would feel about people having the choice for a pure carnivore or keto diet in a hospital setting. I'm very curious. But the article goes on to describe the plight of farmers this year with fertilizer shortages, gross government rules imposed upon them, as well as fuel prices and the rest that we're all pretty familiar with at this point. Like I keep saying, farmers and ranchers need your support. As I frequently do with videos like this that can be construed to be political, look, I don't really care what your politics are when it comes to, the carnivore diet, as long as you defend the right of human beings to have access to a proper human diet. We can debate other policy issues elsewhere, but we should all be united on the simple question of whether at the most basic level, human beings should be able to make their own food choices for themselves. That shouldn't be hard, and that they should not be subject to stupid rules pushed by ideologues. That frankly, these rules have no place in a civilized society. But as always, I could be wrong about that. So let me know in the comments if you actually think a policy like that in reverse would be a good idea. Keto or carnivore imposed from the top down, if you think that'd be appropriate. Or if you think they'll be successful in pushing us onto a processed food vegan diet. There are some of you who I'm sure think that. I'm curious if you actually do. I'm genuinely curious what you generally think about all of this, so let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. As does sharing these videos on social media, that helps enormously as well. I'm Anthony Stine, and thanks for watching today.